Okay, so yesterday I was saying that for Westerners, prior to learning the Lamrim, it's very good to have some idea of what the mind is and some idea of the Four Noble Truths and so on, because this is assumed in the regular Lamrim presentation. So I think a lot hinges on realizing that our body is material in nature and can be detected with scientific instruments, but the mind is non-material in nature, cannot be detected with scientific instruments, and can't be detected with our five senses. Okay, the mind has the nature of clarity and awareness, which can't be seen or touched or whatever. Okay, and the mind is what makes the difference between a live body and a corpse. When you see, a dead relative, you know something's not there. Okay, what's not there is the mind. That clear in nature thing that cognizes, experiences emotions, perceives. So the mind is that whole cognitive perception part of us. It doesn't mean the brain, because the brain is the physical organ. Okay, and it doesn't mean the intellect either. In fact, the word in Tibetan for mind, sem, is also the same word they use for heart, as in somebody who has a good heart. Okay, we usually think mind and heart and brick wall between the two, but in the Buddhist presentation, mind and heart are the same thing. Okay, they cognize, feel, experience. Okay, when we have an idea of the mind, then, and the nature of the mind as being clarity and awareness, then we get an idea that the mind has the capability of perceiving things, and it has the ability to perceive all things whatsoever that exist. What then impinges upon the mind's ability to perceive? Some of it may be physical obscuration. If there's a wall, we can't see on the other side of the wall. If the sound is too far, we can't hear it. Okay? But also there's obscurations on the mind stream, negative karma, afflictions, the seeds of afflictions and karma, and these obscure the mind so that the mental consciousness can't perceive things. Actually, a lot of times in science they talk about the five consciousnesses, visual, auditory, olfactory, gustatory, tactile. But mental consciousness they don't talk about. Okay, but Buddhism talks very much about mental consciousness, and from a Buddhist viewpoint, our mental consciousness is much more important than the five sense consciousnesses, because the five sense consciousnesses rely on the external organs, the physical organs, which are going to go bye-bye at the time of death. Okay, whereas the mental consciousness has a continuum that will go into the future life. And it has the ability to carry with it the karmic seeds, although we often say that the mere eye carries the karmic seeds. In any case, mental consciousness is quite important. It has the possibility to perceive everything that exists. It has the possibility for its good qualities to be expanded and enriched infinitely. But what prevents that is the obscurations on the mind. So what the Dharma is about is how to remove these obscurations on the mind so that the mind can become omniscient, know everything that exists, and have the suitable motivation for doing that, which is infinite compassion and love and bodhicitta. Okay? When we think about the mind, when does the mind exist? Is it just the mind of this life? Yeah, we get into that whole issue. If the mind only exists in this life, then you have to posit what caused the mind. The scientists say the brain, but how can something physical cause something that is non-material as a substantial cause? Okay, so if you think there's only this life, then you have to say what is the cause of the mind in this life. Okay, from Buddhist viewpoint, it's easy. It's the mind in previous life, because it's just the continuity of clarity and awareness. Okay? If you just posit the mind as existing in this life, and yet you think it can become omniscient, then there's an awful lot of work to do in a short period of time. And if you're going to die and your mind's going to stop existing after death, then what's the use anyway of exerting so much effort to practice the path? If you're going to practice the path and then within the next few years, you know, within 100 years you're going to die. Okay? And then, you know, while you can practice Buddhism while not believing in rebirth, and you can certainly benefit from the Buddha's teachings if you don't believe in rebirth, having a very deep practice, it becomes much easier if you have some feeling for rebirth. Okay? Because if there's a feeling for rebirth, then you're concerned with what's going to happen to the continuity of your mind in the next life. You know, and you're concerned with benefiting other sentient beings and their continuity of mind in future lives. Okay? Yeah. Whereas if everything just ends at the, you know, death, then, you know, how long do you have to benefit sentient beings, even if you become a Buddha? Okay? So having an idea of future lives, even if it's just a correct assumption, you're not totally convinced, it can really spur your practice on because it makes you think of beyond this one life. Because if you only think of this life, then your mind is totally immersed in the eight worldly concerns. And Dharma practice becomes very difficult because the mind doesn't think of anything beyond its immediate pleasure. And what's its immediate pleasure? Physical pleasure, you know, nice sound, smells, taste, touch, okay, reputation, praise, friends and relatives, popularity, love, appreciation, all these things that just increase our, you know, our ego's capacity to run our life. Those things are very important if you just think of this one lifetime. Okay, and so we can see that that's, you know, I mean, what is one of our biggest obstructions to practicing the Dharma? It's attachment to the eight worldly concerns, isn't it? And what is it that sustains the eight worldly concerns is the mind that's just thinking about this life, that can't think beyond this life. So that mind is so limited, you know, because this life, definitely in the next 100 years, none of us are going to be alive. Yeah, for sure. It might even be shorter. I mean, some of us are 50-something by now, so, you know, within the next 60 years, you know, at the longest. It might even be tomorrow. But, you know, so if we're only thinking such a small range, I mean, there's infinite time, and we're thinking this very tiny slice of time, and all of our mental energy goes into eking out whatever pleasure we can get in this very small slice of time, then Dharma practice is very difficult, isn't it? Because who wants to give up some seeming pleasure in this life for some ambiguous future life, or even for liberation or enlightenment? You know, let's just be as hedonistic as we possibly can and, you know, get as much sense pleasure as we can. Hang around our friends and relatives for as long as we can endure them. Because after all, we think they're going to give us happiness. But when we hang around them all the time, can we endure them? Anyway, that's a whole other discussion. You see? That's what happens when we, yeah. So, big thunderclap. Okay, so, you know, that's why having an idea of what the mind is and the continuity of consciousness and rebirth really helps us to have a stronger Dharma practice, because it helps us to look beyond the tip of our nose, which is just concerned with my happiness in this life. I better be quiet or go on for another 2 hours.